Good morning and welcome back to Techweek TV, brought to you by Callaghan Innovation. We're here today in Auckland at Callaghan Innovation headquarters on Key Street. My name is Jake Miller. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Unfiltered, and today I'm very excited to be hosting a panel on an area personally that I'm really passionate about. Today's panel is on reinventing education for a tech future and addressing inequality. So we're joined by some incredible leaders from both the tech sector as well as the education space to talk about how those worlds collide and how we can better work together to create some really great solutions for the future of education. So on the panel we have my very good friend Vanessa here from Microsoft, we have David, we have Massa, we have Santhul, and we have Andrew. So guys, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here. I thought just to kick this off, considering the size of the panel, maybe we can just go through from starting with you, Andrew, just on what you do and how you fit into this world and why it's an area you're passionate about.
Oh, thanks, Jake. Well, Andrew McPherson, I'm on the Executive Council of EdTech NZ. So EdTech NZ is a group across industries that really looks at education technology and how it can be used in New Zealand and also for export. I've spent the last 5 years working with a group called Industry Connect, really helping bridge the gap between education and employment here in New Zealand.
Fantastic, thank you. And Santhul?
Thanks, Jake. Glad to be here. I'm the founder of Youth Hub. It's an online platform for young people to bridge the gap between education to employment, and it's been a fantastic journey and part of the EdTech Council as well, and it's been inspiring to see how this space has been evolving.
Yeah, when did you start that company?
It's about 5 years now.
Okay,
yeah,
awesome.
It's been an exciting journey. I can say when I was a young person, but no longer a young person myself, unfortunately. But it's been really fantastic.
Yeah, it's scary how fast we all age.
It's very scary.
I think I was 19 when I met Vanessa. Massa, what about yourself?
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Jake. So my name is Massa Mohageg. I'm a senior lecturer in the School of Engineering, Computer and Mathematical Sciences at AUT. So day-to-day base, I'm lecturing in artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, mentoring, supervising students. And also I'm a founder and director of a not-for-profit organization called SheShop, which is a networking platform bringing professionals from industry, high school students and tertiary students to connect and learn from each other.
Very, very cool. Thank you so much. And David, what about yourself?
Sure, Jake. I'm David Glover. My day job's Executive Director of Partnerships at Unitec Institute of Technology. I'm also a professional director of a number of education technology businesses. And last year I co-authored a book called Don't Worry About the Robots, so I have an optimistic view about technology.
Absolutely, thank you. And what about you, Vanessa?
Kia ora, Jake. Yes, thanks for having me along. I am the Enterprise Director for Microsoft here in New Zealand. And for me, education is something I'm personally passionate about as a mother of 2 incredible children who are coming through, but also extremely fortunate to be on the Genesis Energy Schools Trust Board, where we're focused on helping schools to use STEM and really and truly accelerate change. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, I went back to my old primary school recently in Greymouth, of all places, and I was so impressed by how far a classroom had come from when I was at school, only maybe like 10 years ago. It actually blew me away. So, I know there's a long way to go, but what are you noticing from Jack and Grace when they come home? What is the from a technology perspective, how would you describe a modern day learning experience today?
Well, look, they're always on. I think back in our old day, we did have to get out there and play, and they are coding without knowing. I think, watching technology like Minecraft for schools, which we've actually just launched in Te Reo, is just phenomenal. Like they are embracing things that we could never even imagined. In fact, I have to find myself quite often as a mother going, well, in my day we didn't do these things, but we didn't have them. And if we did, this is how the kids want to learn. They're so engaged. They're so proud of their blogs that are on the iPad or the Chromebook or whatever it is, and they're sharing content. And I think for me, it's kind of changing that stereotype of actually tech is for everyone, and our kids, the next generation, are proving that.
That's amazing, yeah. And also not just tech, but the creative side as well. I remember when I walked into this classroom, there was literally no desks. And I was like, where do the kids work? And they were like, oh, there's tables all over the block. They just go where they want. They sit together, they collaborate together, then they come and sit on the mat. And I was just like, man, I wish school was this fun when I was in school. So I'm going to pass over to Andrew now, who's going to do a presentation to kick us off, a little bit more information on the space, and then we're going to go into some questions from there.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. Look, I just want to set some context in terms of education technology and what are the signals coming back and what's the information coming back from around the world. And look, I've picked up some information here from the World Economic Forum that I was wanting to just go through to summarise really. And what the World Economic Forum are telling us is that there's this revolution going on in terms of the skills that are needed worldwide. These digital skills, but it's not just digital skills. There's other, like other personality requirements and things like that are needed. And really, we need to quickly upskill our workforce and also our young people to meet those skills. And look, in previous revolutions, that's taken a very long time. And what we're saying is this disruption that's happening with technology now is coming so fast, we can't actually wait for it to happen. We actually have to be much more work proactively. And we're really encouraging businesses to work with governments and other education organisations to quickly upskill people. So there's some quotes I've captured here coming back from employers, and the first one here is from Michael Dell. He says, the thing we're most worried and concerned about is the skills shortage. So what we're seeing is employers are actually saying that there's a skills shortage out there, and they're starting to detect that already. We've got another quote here from the CEO of Microsoft. He says, we know the jobs of the future will require different skills, so how do we equip the youth of the world for these jobs? So really, these large employers are seeing that there's a problem out there that's growing. And I've got another quote here from a researcher at MIT. I think it's important to realise as well. And he says, why tech makes a bigger pie, there's no economic law that says that everyone will get an even share of it. So there's this problem with equality that we're seeing now that tech is bringing a lot of opportunity for people, and also challenges, but it's not evenly distributed. So really, we need to be more proactive if we want to see, if we want to close that skill gap and see it more equitable. So we're thinking about, right, we need to close that skill gap. What are the skills that are really needed? And again, there's been some great work done by the World Economic Forum. And I say it breaks down into 3 areas. There's the foundational skills, there's competencies, and then character qualities. So the foundational skills are what we probably more traditionally think is, what education provides you, which is literacy, numeracy, scientific literacy, ICT, ICT's in there, financial literacy, and cultural and civic literacy. But that's really just the start. That's just the foundation. On top of that, we need these competencies like problem-solving skills and curiosity, communication skills, collaboration, and then the character qualities on top of that, which is around the curiosity, initiative, and some of these more character attributes. So it's not just about teaching those foundational skills anymore. So I think it brings us to the next question is, so how do you teach these new skills? What should we be doing to close that gap? And it's really interesting to look at the ways of teaching these new skills. It's around play-based learning and breaking down the learning into smaller coordinated pieces. And there's some interesting points in here about using a hands-on approach, offering engaged caregiving. Some of these things that are not typically what we think of occurring at schools or in traditional education. So it's actually very interesting to think about how do you teach these skills. And I think when we start to look at education, we need to be thinking about, and technology, we need to be thinking about how do we grow these skills. So I just want to go to another slide here. And what we're hearing back is that most existing education systems are actually falling short of delivering these skills at the moment because of the way that they're still highly siloed. I think we're seeing a lot of improvement, and it's particularly over the last few years, and here in New Zealand we're seeing the traditional education changing. But I think globally it's not changing fast enough, and that's part of the problem. That's why we're seeing this opening gap between education and employment, but also this digital skills gap. So what I'd like to do is one of the big questions I think we need to be looking at from an EdTech point of view is what is currently happening in EdTech to solve these global problems. And I'd like to play a short video really just to set some additional context, and then we can kick off the discussion.
The world is experiencing a pretty dramatic skills gap. More than 50% of US college graduates are unemployed or underemployed a year after they graduate.
We have a real problem today with the relevance of the experience for many of our students. It's not directly tied to the learner's professional and personal aspirations.
There are millions of children in school, but they're not learning.
One of the biggest opportunities in education over the next 5 to 10 years is the changes in delivery that we've seen, where every individual will be able to access individualized education for them without relying on traditional institutions. So really it's up to the individual to frame their own education now.
The student too often is the last constituent that's taken into account. There's such a strong emphasis on teaching to the test that some of these softer skills, which are foundational for success on the test, are seen as somehow less important.
If we look at the skills gap, the kinds of things that employers are looking for is the ability to collaborate. Many technologies are meant to teach using a cognitive approach. Increasingly, we're seeing technologies that also focus on socio-emotional skills.
These are really different character-based skills and traits that are oftentimes hard to quantify. The New Vision for Education project really is helping to shine a light on the soft skills that are needed for development of students across the world. Figure out how these skills are measured, how they're taught, and different ways we can use technology to develop them.
There's part of knowledge that you cannot actually put in digital format because it will be part of the learning process of meeting someone. And that part will be the one that will differentiate you from other people.
Children learn better when they learn with a peer with whom they're friends. I'm interested in technology that makes a bond with students and that uses that social bond to improve the educational atmosphere.
There's narrative, there's multimedia, there are interactive capabilities, there's assessment.
The question today is how do we use all this available knowledge to develop new ventures and to create new jobs? What we are doing now in Brazil is going to the human resource department, the companies, so we can matchmaking with the course that we provide, like how to work in groups, creativity, project management, soft skills.
What we'd really like to see in the future is a change not just from the employer, but from almost every stakeholder in education, where it's not the degree or where the knowledge was obtained that matters, but it's the skill level and those particular skills that were obtained and the way that students showed those skills.
It will require the collaboration and partnership by all the stakeholders. That only is possible with a very powerful leadership.
Enabling more students to go through higher education is just a social benefit that's incredibly important.
The new generation will be much smarter.
So I think that sets the scene really well in terms of where we're at, in terms of digital skills gap and the situation with education. But also with technology as well. I'm seeing a lot of technology coming through that has the potential to improve, but also disrupt as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what we want to explore today. So I think I'd like to start with Vanessa in terms of what do you think technology companies can do really to improve things for the next generation?
Yeah, look, it's it's something I think it's top of mind, and I think it's around accessibility and ultimately trying to predict how do we train people now for those jobs of the future. I mean, who would have thought 5-10 years ago that the largest organisation doesn't have any beds, but we're all using our app to actually go and stay somewhere, or everything now it's about accessibility to get your cab no longer on the side of the street waving down. And I think it's not about there won't be the jobs, it's just trying to visualize what the jobs will be. And interesting enough, actually, I read something that Microsoft is now dedicated by the year 2022 to have 25,000 more people completely trained in AI. Well, why is that? Because that's the new companies that are going to be developed. That's the skill set. So it doesn't necessarily mean that workers are no longer going to be doing that job. They're actually going to be more relevant doing something that's going to make a difference. And that's totally how I see this revolution changing it for so many of our younger leaders that are coming through. Don't think of it as the job that's gone. Think about the possibility of the job that's going to come.
It's a great insight, yeah.
So you see tech companies taking a leadership role and really starting to initiate some of these things?
100%, and I think it's something we take very, very seriously at Microsoft. In fact, when I met Jake, he was my reverse mentor because I needed to understand also as a business leader, what was the next generation of leader looking for? So we do a lot of programs, and probably the one that I'm most proud of is our internship program, which is bringing young youth in to truly sit down with us and say, what are we designing for this future? Have a say in it. What does it look like? And it's not just us, it is all the tech giants that are taking this seriously, because fundamentally there won't be enough people for the jobs because there is going to be a gap. In fact, we're going even wider around partnering up with companies like Be Accessible, because we believe there's a whole range of talent out there with people with accessibility needs that could be working with us. And a great example was Microsoft launched a role and they got a CV that came in and this person told everything at what he wasn't good at. And one of our accessibility needs people got hold of this and went, hey, I think this person might be on the spectrum. So they rang this guy and brought him in for an interview, and he now leads our Xbox gaming division.
Wow.
And that to me is how we have to think about the next generation of talent. It's not just about women or men, it's about accessibility of everybody. And that's the sort of thing that I'm most proud of what we're doing.
So technology has a great opportunity to improve that accessibility. So essentially.
Totally.
So David, I mean, how are we seeing technology currently impacting education?
Well, it's almost a perfect storm. In the schools, the average age of a teacher is 50. So for them, if you take the definition of technology as anything that was invented after you were born, including me, because I'm upwards of that number, there's a lot of new things happening. And 30 years since the internet was invented, another 30 years' time, what's the world going to look like? And in the meantime, the students that are coming through the schools and now coming through to tertiary have levels of expectation of always on, 24-hour access, personalised learning. And the education system is struggling to meet that demand. I think we know where we need to get. And as you've indicated, there's lots of technology companies working for solutions, but it's actually a whole of country, in my book, an NZ Inc. challenge.
Yeah.
So us, Pastor Sen, actually, what do you see are the barriers that are really, getting in the way of people getting the education they need?
I think if you look at the entire ecosystem, it's actually extremely complex for young people to navigate. It's when you leave school and you're going into the work realm, that gap still exists, and I think we have to bridge that gap. And also we have to, as what Vanessa was saying, there's so much of young people and it's real-time information. We need some way to connect real-time information that's personalized to themselves. So that's when they can start thinking about what's their talent, what's their passion, and where and how do I get to that point. So I think those two things, and also accessibility as well, of course, 100%. We need to start thinking how could we break the barriers down for financial means, socioeconomic, various different things, and I think we have to bring the entire sector together to solve this problem that we have and break these barriers down.
You touch on something there, this personalised real time, and this is something that immediately springs to mind as AI, and the ability of AI to personalise the education experience at large scale and at volume and potentially cost effectively. So Martha, I mean, look, you must have something
I'm
to...
really excited about AI and education. So this is a topic very close to my heart, because our next generation, as you all mentioned, they're growing up in an age that is really filled with technology. These technology really reshaping, redefining. As much as don't really like the word disrupting, but really disrupting every aspects of our lives. So back to your point, I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, and very sadly, I just saw that the other last month, she asked Google Assistant to play Peppa Pig for her. So she doesn't really need me anymore to even play a video. And that was really sad. So our next generation, they're growing up, and Google Assistant, Alexa, they're just a few examples of AI in actions. So I think this is really natural when people are asking me most of the time, will AI ever replace our teachers? And I think for some really good reasons, this is impractical and to some extent undesirable really to saying that AI replace our teachers. But AI is already embedded in our education system. So to give you a few examples, there's a company right here in New Zealand, in Christchurch, Puna. They designed an Emmy. Emmy is a math tutor. So you can actually monitoring students in real time, identifying knowledge gap, and they come up with some feedback real time to the teachers. So this is one example. So it's been trialed with over 30 high school with 2,500 students. So with AI, we can come up with some tailored content and information. So there is no longer waiting for tutor to get back to you. So 24/7 access to someone that will be available to answer all your questions. So another thing which is AI companion, someone that can be with you throughout your high school or throughout your education, and they can, based on your knowledge, based on your experience and your interest, they can suggest your career path. Yeah. So this is really interesting. So we're really seeing different applications of AI. But with all of these, our teachers' jobs are not really at threat. So because I believe AI won't be able to replace our teachers, because teachers, they don't just impart knowledge. They really teach wisdom through their own experience. They inspire and motivate the students. And I don't really know any AI system will be able to do any of these things. Yeah. And I think the biggest missing factor between human teacher and AI teacher is empathy. So we can't really find a machine to be able to teach or show empathy. There are so many arguments around machine can be creative, but I know that AI won't be able to teach creativity. Machine will be able to exhibit digital, critical thinking, but can be teach, critical thinking. Yeah. And this is why AI is happening, and they are really impacting our education. And education is really no exception from any other fields that AI impacting. But what is obvious for me that education we know today is different from yesterday, and it will be different from what we will know in the future.
So it's really interesting, we're talking about AI because it's almost like the threat is also the solution, which is, we're talking about AI because AI has the potential to automate, a lot of jobs, and I think the forecast that we see is potentially 40%, 50% of jobs could be impacted in some way by AI, but really we're saying it's also something that could help, with education and accelerate people through to closing that skills gap. So, look, keen to pass to David and say, so if you were to look out, say, to 2050 and say 30 years' time, how would you envision the school of the future or the university of the future?
So a lot of it is about what's going to change and what's going to stay the same. One thing that's going to stay the same, I believe, is that we're going to need a safe place for our young people to be while we're at work. Unless the future of work is there is no work and we're all at home. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think work is meaningful for people, and we will continue to strive and do things. So education provides a pastoral wraparound for young people that is essentially human. So I hope we won't be automating our childcare anytime soon. So I think schools and tertiary institutions in some shape or form will certainly exist. However, they're going to have to change not only from the technology, I'll come to that in a second, but I was just looking at some stats, New Zealand forecasts, and by 2038, not even 2050, 48% of students in under 15 students will be Maori Pacific students. And we already know we have an amazing amount of evidence that this system right now is not working for those priority groups. So it is absolute urgency that we understand what is not working and what can work better. And yes, technology has a role to play in that. We also have the forecast that most of the population growth will be in cities, and we will need more schools in Auckland. And where are we going to put them, and where are we going to find the teachers? Again, technology can help with efficiency and maybe distance learning and online learning, and the interaction between the workplace and schools. I think we already see Year 12 students in the workplace every Thursday doing semi-apprenticeship, so we're getting more of that porousness. As to what the technology will be, as I said earlier, 30 years on from the World Wide Web, another 30 years, who knows? Broadly, I've seen people go down the Blade Runner scenario where it's absolute disaster, and we have the synchronicity and Terminator comes after us, or the Jetsons scenario and we're all running around in flying cars. In fact, Blade Runner and the Jetsons both have a flying car, so that's one thing that we can be pretty confident about. But at the end of the day, we get to decide. what we do with the technology, so it's our responsibility. I don't think the technology is going to do it to us. So let's use it for good.
So if we think, picking up on what you're saying around diversity and inclusion, that technology could potentially be a way that we can improve equality or equity in the workforce and open up career paths to people that would have traditionally struggled. So, Vanessa, how do you see that playing out?
Oh, look, 100%. This is so near and dear to my heart, something I'm so passionate about. And, for me, looking at Māori and Pacifica specifically, we don't have anywhere near enough coming through the tech sector. And so when I joined Microsoft, we actually have a Māori and Pacifica pillar. And I came in and I said, so where are they all? And actually the feedback I got is, well, they don't really want this and they're not really passionate. And so I said, right, we're going to do something about this. And so we've got an incredible intern program, like I mentioned, and we went and found Māori and Pacifica interns, and we have got 6 of them working for us. And interesting, talking to these groups, like, why wouldn't you come and put your hand up for a role here? Well, not really good enough. IT's for geeks. It's really an engineer's type role. And all of us leaders have got to break down those barriers, because I got to say it's the best career I've ever had. I was fortunate that I fell into it. But we also did a hui last week, a Viaduct Village hui, and we would have had 80 South Auckland students come. And honestly, the feedback from them, it was just extraordinary for them to go, really? You could consider me working for this sort of organisation. So I think there's a confidence issue. I think we've got to break down barriers of what tech people look like, and that's quite extraordinary. And I think as businesses, we have got to actually go and bring them in, because that's how we're going to change communities, and a lot of the other issues is one person at a time. And I think businesses, we've got to stand up, we've got to back this, and we've got to do something about it. I think there's too much talk, not enough action. And I think that is what I'm so proud of. And in fact, the next step is we will be launching Te Reo in our translator hub. We are going to help New Zealand. We're going to help, our traditional language. How do we make that entwined in everything we do to make a lot of the next leaders feel comfortable about who they are and what they represent.
Oh, that's fantastic. No, it's great to hear that these things are going on, and there's opportunities there for much more inclusion in the workplace.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
and you've got to meet some of these people. I mean, Venus, who works for me, blows me away what she's capable of doing. And I just watching her grow and what she's achieving, and working in Microsoft. I mean, her career's set now, and just so amazing for us.
I mean, it's so good to hear Microsoft in New Zealand is really taking leadership in this area and setting a great example. So, well done. Sen, so I just want to talk about what you're doing is really bridging that gap and making employment more accessible for a lot of people, and potentially a lot of people that we're just talking about that wouldn't see some of these careers as an option for them. I mean, technology must be helping you to do this at scale and make it more accessible to people. Can you explain to us what you're doing?
So essentially what we are trying to do is level the playing field for all young people in New Zealand and hopefully the world in the future. We feel that we have to create this spark in the young person for them to start dreaming. And I think that's one of the biggest things we have to do as educators and employers. We have to create that opportunity for them to, wow, I can do this as well. Like, I can. So this is something I think we as an organization are trying to help level the entire playing field for all young people to say that, right, I can do this. Now, how do I get to that point? What are the different steps that I can get there? And help showcase a side to them that employers don't really get to see. So through visual stuff. So I think we have to use technologies that they are using on a fingertip to reverse engineer that and showcase what they want to do. And I think once you do that in a whole entire scale, it's just going to get them speaking their own language to employers that they're going to see what they want to see. And that's what we're trying to do.
Well, that's great. I mean, it sounds like there's some really good initiatives going on in New Zealand, really to close this digital skills gap and also improve equity and improve inclusion. Now, in the same time as these are happening, there's technologies and tools being built around this, isn't there? I mean, there's things that there's a platform you're building. And you know, Dave, you're as director on some companies, and I think Marcia, you mentioned a startup in Christchurch that's using AI. So there's some really good things going on. I mean, what's the opportunity that you see for New Zealand to export some of these technologies and really grow these internationally? Marcia, I'll pass to you. Do you see there's an export opportunity?
I think that's actually a really good question. So last year I was a guest lecturer at University in New York, and my talk was around education and AI. And I had a slide, and the slide was, the title of my slide was, Will AI replace our teachers? And at the time, my answer was probably not anytime soon. I was checking my LinkedIn, and I just saw Soul Machines at that time. They released the first digital teacher here in New Zealand. And I was so proud to go back, you know, that was my presentation was day after that. And I went and I told them that in New Zealand, we just released first digital teacher. And this digital teacher goes to school and teaching about renewable energy. So we are doing some great things here in New Zealand. And I think we definitely can just, you know, make advantage of that. And the other important things is we have to work in our next generation right now, and we have to equip them with some of the skill sets they need. You mentioned that, and that was in the stat that you showed earlier to us. It's not a week I'm not receiving phone call from people doing a startup or running, you know, working in an organization. They're looking for a skilled graduate to join their company. Yep. And they specifically, sometimes they mention, we are looking for a female engineer. Yep. Because they know the benefit of, you know, working in a diverse environment. They know all the stats about the more diverse your workplace, you know, the better innovation, better creativity, better outcome. And we don't really have any of them. Yeah. So we really have to work hard. So this is why we have to introduce some of we don't really know what we're training our students for, because 85% of jobs in 2030, they don't exist yet. Yep. But what we know for sure, that we have to equip our students with some of the skill sets that they need. And interestingly enough, none of them need technology or, you know, as a part of it. As you showed before, the first 3 top skill is critical problem solving, creativity, and was the first one, creativity, problem solving, and critical thinking. Yes. So none of them actually use technology. So technology is enabler. So if we can make sure that we can introduce technology early on, as well as, you know, equip our students with these skill sets, we can be one of the first in the world that we actually have our students ready to, you know, to get jobs in the future.
So are you using technology at AUT yet to teach some of those skills?
Definitely. So we definitely, what is the focus for us right now? The role of lecturer is now it's more like a facilitator. So we're running majority of our courses as a teamwork. So we're just making sure that students, they come up with their ideas. So the problem solving is definitely the main part of our projects. So we are working with real world problem. So it's not a fancy idea that's coming from the lecturer. So all the problem and all the projects, they're coming from industry. And we link a student with industry. So we gave them opportunity. It's not anymore working in a classroom. So they go and actually working with companies based on a project. And then they have to go and present that prototype. So it is really from a start to the end, it is trying to help them with these skill sets, which we usually call them the softer skill, as well as us as a lecturer, we're just introducing to use the tool and how to use it.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's great. David, I want to come to you in terms of the role as a director on some edtech startup companies and things like that. So what would your advice be if there was, you know, some young people out there that wanted to start an edtech company and help change the world for the better?
Go do it.
Yeah. So how should they approach it?
The time to fail is when you're young, right? Okay. Because you can, whatever you learn from the experience, you can take it through the rest of your life. And I think a lot of the younger generation are very interested in doing things for themselves or doing things for the greater good, sense of purpose, sense of mission. Even if they're looking at joining a traditional company, they want to know what the values are, etc. Yes. So they're very mission driven. So if you've got a great idea, give it a go. The New Zealand venture capital and investment community is evolving and has grown up tremendously in the last 10 years. And there was a recent report that's showing we are really beginning to grow some great successes. That's not number one. I think number two, New Zealand is your test bed. It's always about being international from day one. This is not a market that you're going to make a lot of money in or build a big business necessarily, but you can get a proof of concept of your idea and then take it to the world. And we already have a number of examples of that, you know, longer established or more recent startups. And in EdTech, it's a really hot space right now globally. America is talking endlessly about innovation in education technology and is looking for solutions. And we know how to travel, and New Zealand is well liked abroad. We've got permission.
Yeah.
So to a young person considering that idea, I'd say give it a go.
So what do you think the best way for someone to get connected in with the whole EdTech community in New Zealand?
Well, that's a patsy question, because I'm the third member or the executive of the EdTech Association, so we've got a great website, you can get in touch with us. But equally, there are a number of associations and organisations around the country that we can put you in touch with, or schools, or some of the technology companies know. Education New Zealand knows. So there's lots of ways to find support. And another great thing about New Zealand is we do help one another. You know, we don't take a competitive view, we don't share our secrets. All the organisations I've been involved with, we've had to go and talk and engage with other businesses and the government, and you always get help. So it's probably the easiest place that I know of to actually start a business and flourish, and there's a lot of statistics to support that.
Well, that's great. Well, Jake, I'll pass back to you. And was there any questions you had you'd like to ask to wrap up?
No, I mean, I think you've done a fantastic job. I was just sitting here thinking it's probably definitely the easiest panel I've hosted all week. AI might replace a lot of things. One of those things will probably be my job. But in terms of some of those edtech companies, obviously, you know, it's interesting for me to listen in on this because that's my industry as well. With Unfiltered, we are an edtech platform ourselves. You know, and we've been having a major focus interviewing some of the founders and CEOs of top edtech companies in the United States, such as Code Academy on that video, Udemy, you know, companies like that. So I'm just curious to know, like, who you all think are leading the way in this space, not just startups but also colleges as well. Like, what colleges have you know, because I think the education system in many colleges is very far behind when it comes to what we're talking about of integrating, you know, technology and education. Like, who are the global leaders right now who we should all be learning from?
Do you want to have a go at that?
Yes, I think Stanford University, they're doing amazing things, and they do actually have a Stanford platform, online platform, that they're offering many free courses online.
Yes.
And also what is really interesting about them, that they are closely working with Silicon Academy. So all of their students, they get to work with some of the startup and companies in Silicon Valley at the same time they're introducing technology.
Yeah. And what do you think kind of like the utopian way of learning looks like in 2019, Andrew?
Look, I think you can do a lot by yourself now at very low cost. You can get a lot of free courses online from good universities. But I think the challenge that we've got at the moment is how do you put those all together to create a learning pathway that then leads to a career and add these other skills on top that's required. And I think that's really what's going to happen over the next 10 or 20 years. We're going to have that assistance, like the AI assistants, that can help us to put all that together so that we're doing the right courses and things that will help us gain employment with an employer and also help us to achieve our goals. That's really where I think the magic still needs to exist.
Yeah, one of the challenges that a lot of these online education companies have, the likes of Udemy, edX, Coursera, is incredibly low completion rates. I believe some studies put them at about 4%. They certainly haven't managed to compete with universities in that sense, because people in the actual classroom are going through courses and going through and completing these courses. What do you think the answers are to actually keeping people engaged over the long term when they are completing some of these online courses? Maybe you can give a perspective on that.
I think there's a couple of things going on there. Solely learning online, it can be quite a lonely experience, and you can set up chat groups, but if it's asynchronous, it's really hard to feel like you're in a cohort or you're collaborating in your learning. So I think blended learning, which involves human beings as well, is a far more effective solution from that point of view. The other thing, and this is an interesting discussion for us at Unitech, because many of our students come to us not for a piece of paper, but so they can learn skills for a job, which I think is the future of education in many ways. And if they get a job halfway through their course, is that a failure? That they don't complete?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's a really strange metric. It's, you know, it's the education sector's metric, but if they go out and have a productive career in the economy, that's a success. So I think we have to sort of be really clear what success looks like.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Just final question for all of you, conscious of time. If you were all 18 years old today, leaving school, first of all, I've got 2 questions, rapid fire. Would you go to university? Yes or no? Followed by, what would you study if you did? And if you weren't going to go to university, what would you do? Starting with you, Vanessa.
Oh my goodness. Well, as a high school dropout, it's really hard for me to answer that. So I'm probably going to answer it differently. Set goals, think big, take risks.
Okay.
Honestly, no matter what you're studying and what you want to be, I think whatever your learning curve is going to be, have those things and you'll have a phenomenal life.
Great answer.
Well, I benefited from a really good university experience. I don't want to knock it too hard, but I would like to suggest that we replace the OE with the EE. Instead of having an overseas experience, let's have an entrepreneurial experience. Before we jump back into 3-year commitments around education. Let's get out, engage with the world, do something interesting.
Yeah, there you answer.
So I'm from academia, so I love university and I really find my job rewarding. So, but I really want to just break that barrier between industry and university. So I'm just thinking that they need to work very closely with each other. And if I want to go back to university, I will probably study again AI, but this time with probably being expert in cybersecurity, because I know that none of these applications go very far ahead if they don't really consider privacy into it.
I'd hate to be responsible for an interview that Derek McCormick hires you from, so I think it's a good answer.
I think, Jake, 18, not too far away, hopefully. But I think if I had to do it all over again, I would say one of the biggest things is to, yes, I would do university again, but I might do it a bit more shorter. In terms of the courses, bite-sized learning, I think it's going to be quite something really powerful in the future. And at the same time, I would also envision my advice would be to dream. And I've come from an aviation background. I'm doing tech at the moment. No relation in some lot of sense. But one of the things that I found out was some of the skills that I learned could be applied. And once I started to dream, you start to have opportunities come to you. And I think many young people have to start to dream and see what they can do, and it will happen.
It's a great answer. Thank you.
Yeah, again, difficult question. I've benefited a lot from, I went through University of Auckland, did an engineering degree in electrical and electronic engineering, which was well suited for when I graduated in '89, so it's led me into a fantastic career. But I think if I was approaching it again, I would probably do a lot more online study myself to get my first job and be working at the same time as doing additional study and stretch that study out over a much longer period of time. Absolutely. Probably focusing still in technology, but probably data science is something that was forward-looking.
So many great answers. And how does a high school dropout climb to the very top of some of the country's greatest companies?
Never stop learning. Have you've got to have a growth mindset. You've got to believe in yourself, and you have to take the chances. And it's a learn it all. I'm learning all the time. I'm constantly doing courses, and it doesn't stop at university.
Yeah, what's been the biggest difference for you leaving a company like Spark, a phenomenal company here in New Zealand, but obviously a New Zealand company, and joining a global organisation? What opportunities has that presented to you?
Oh, just seeing what potential we have in New Zealand to take it to the world. And I think, I was so fortunate growing up at Spark, most amazing career. But what Microsoft's given me is just basically the blinkers have gone off, and we can just be so much better on the world stage, leveraging tech. At the end of the day, the sun starts here, and we should be propelling out there. And kind of what I say to the Microsoft executives, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? We can roll it out to all of New Zealand, and if it doesn't work, we do have electricity here. I mean, I constantly, joking aside, Microsoft global executives love coming here. They see the number 8 wire, they see this innovation, they see the passion around what we want to do. We've just got to think bigger, like your company, like what you've done. I mean, your success is phenomenal. And I think, it's that we've got to embrace and celebrate so much more.
Great, thank you so much, guys. That really means a lot for you being here. Andrew, Santhul, Masa, David, Vanessa, thank you guys so much for taking the time. There's so many wisdom, insights, and just sitting here and listening and absorbing all of what you had to say was a huge pleasure. So I really do appreciate you all taking the time. And thank you so much to the viewers for tuning in from all around the country. I've had thousands of people here on Techweek TV throughout the day, and we really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to listen in. Thank you so much to Callaghan Innovation as well for hosting us here today, and we'll be back shortly with more great content here on Tech TV. Thank you so much.